Welcome to Between the Briefs, a podcast by Steno. We're here to bring you practical tips, expert insights, and real conversations about the pretrial process, court reporting, and the legal technology shaping the future of litigation. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm your host, Joe Stevens. Whether you're an attorney, paralegal, or just curious about how technology is changing the legal industry, we've got something for you. Each episode will break down complex topics, share behind-the-scenes intel, and talk to the people leading innovation in and out of the courtroom. So grab a coffee and let's get into what's happening between the briefs.
Hello and welcome to Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. I'm your host, Adrian, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Joe Stevens.
And today we had the pleasure of speaking with Diana Khan, a highly accomplished attorney, real estate broker, and business owner. Diana is a founder of DK Law Group and a co-owner of Premier Title LLC and Lux Realty, alongside several other successful ventures with expertise in real estate law, estate planning, family law, and business planning. She provides comprehensive legal services while balancing her entrepreneurial spirit and family life. Diane is not only known for her impressive legal acumen, but also for her ability to lead with empathy and drive. As a top 40 under 40 attorney in the U.S., she combines her passion for law with a forward-thinking approach, embracing technology and innovative solutions to better serve her clients. Diana, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me and such a warm welcome. You know, I gotta give you a little bit of a jab because MSN yesterday said I was top 12 attorneys in the country, and you didn't have that one in there. So just taking a jab there. It's fine.
Fair enough. Moving up, I gotta give it to you. That is impressive. Very impressive. So let's just start there. You've had a remarkable career as both an attorney and a business owner. You know, where did this all begin, and how are you able to manage it all?
I don't know that I'm managing it well, but I'm managing it. It just started with getting into real estate first. I was never going to go to law school. My mother said, you have to be a lawyer. So of course I said, of course, no, I'm not going to be a lawyer. What are you talking about? Got into real estate, did that for a little bit. And this was at a time when the economic market had taken a complete turn the wrong way. So I was doing short sale negotiations, and we did about 8,000 short sale negotiations. Me and these two realtors started a company out of nowhere. And a year and a half later, the state of Maryland came knocking on our door and told us we were doing something illegal. And I was like, there's no regulations on how to get paid on short sales when you negotiate them for people to avoid foreclosure. So they audited our whole business because we'd started this business that didn't exist prior to the downturn. And I was 20 or 21. I had been in business for about a year and a half. I was making a lot of money as a 21-year-old, just kind of got lucky. I was sitting in the state of Maryland's Department of Labor and Licensing with a bunch of lawyers who were trying to figure out what short sales were. And I looked around and I was like, I am the smartest person in this room. I am also the lowest paid person in this room. And then I realized that I'm going to go to law school. And I went to law school 6 months later. And then that's where it started. And I told myself I'd never go back into real estate, and proved myself wrong there as well. And just proving myself wrong, I think, has been the goal for the last 10 years.
The beginning point there is extremely entrepreneurial. And then you take that and you realize you kind of pivot into a industry. I mean, I'm a practicing attorney too. We're not necessarily known for having a tremendously entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, it's a very entrenched sort of legacy industry that doesn't necessarily like being disrupted. I think, maybe that's true about a lot of other industries as well, but I feel like it's particularly true with attorneys. So how do those two worlds collide for you?
You know, I'm either really well liked or really well hated. And for the most part, I find that you're right. There is sort of this legacy thing going on with attorneys, because I do marketing very different than most law firms. I am very much I'm doing TikToks. I'm doing a lot of changes. I'm marketing everywhere. I spend a lot of money on marketing. I have an entire marketing department with 13 people. So we do it very different. And when I'm in court and I have an older attorney, you can tell they think I'm going to be bad at my job. You can just tell they're like, oh, there's the girl with the funny commercials. And there's this pivot of them just not treating me with respect or anything like that, because it's just so different. But then by the time I'm done, mostly they're asking for advice or asking for numbers, because they realize that I can sort of back the marketing with what I perform. I think, when we were talking prior to this podcast, I told a story, and I think it's so worth mentioning again. I have a lawyer who emailed me. I got hired basically because my client wanted me to be a jerk to the other side because the other side was a jerk. And I get on the phone with this attorney, never heard of him. And he goes, "You're the girl with the stupid sheep commercials." And he just goes off on me. And I got quiet and I was like, "I have no idea who you are." Done. Hung up, emailed him. I was like, "Hey, I really don't think you were very professional on that phone call. Let's just stick to email." And he sends me an email and a half, like paragraph and a half, talking about my marketing and how him and his lawyer friends were sitting down laughing at how stupid it was and unprofessional and how it doesn't do justice to the lawyers in the industry. And him and his friends were laughing about it. So I did what any lawyer would do. I responded and I said, "Thank you so much for your feedback. I'm confident the silly commercial is going to probably hit the clients I want to hire me. But I have to thank you because I myself have so many clients. I haven't had time to watch daytime television and see my commercial on TV. So I'm really appreciative that you told me my marketing is working. Perhaps in the future, you will also stop hating on other people and have time to get clients."
Dropping the bomb. I love it. Now, I'm curious, this really shows that you're a forward-thinking attorney and, you understand that content is king, really, when it comes to getting in front of the people that you want to end up representing. How do you feel the industry is right now at kind of adopting that mindset?
I think our lawyers are falling behind. I think that we're seen as stuffy. We're seen as, not approachable. And I think it's a mistake. I think having high billables and making a red door to get into your office is changing the vibe for people because lawyers are going to become outdated. People want accessibility. They want to know who they're talking to. They want to see the lawyer who's got verbal diarrhea or something like that, who's making TikTok videos about how they embarrass themselves. I think my clients really enjoy knowing that I'm human first and, letting an F-bomb down in a console where I say, "So you messed up," and just cursing about it. They're kind of taken back, but I'm like, "It's okay. We're human. Let's talk about how to fix it." It empowers people to want to reach out to lawyers. And I think it's very different with what law firms are doing. And I think it's also not as conventional when I do negotiations with lawyers who are very stuck in the old.
Diana, how have you, on the marketing front, given how non-traditional it is for this industry, how are you tracking success? And I'm kind of curious, what have you seen be some of your more successful approaches to marketing?
So I actually look at marketing in a 4-tiered environment. So there's obviously direct hits. Like if I'm doing a marketing that's like a seminar or something that's going to get me direct clients, I'm tracking how much money that I do to get myself out in front of this many people and how many clients did I get from it. And then that's more of a direct ROI that I look at for 90 days. But I have other investments such as TV commercials, streaming, pushing SEO, pushing Google, and all of that for name recognition. And I actually give it a 6-month budget where I see who's mentioning it where. And we're very big on tracking where our client base comes from. But I don't just stop there. I also do direct marketing, which is not as traditional with, I think, what lawyers are doing. So for example, I pull up any house that's been sold within 20 miles of my office, and I have a handwritten postcard that gets sent out to them. And it says, "Welcome to the community. I have 3 kids. I live in this community as well. I'm a lawyer. This is what I do. This is what my husband does. I'd love to ever talk if you want to talk." And most people are like, "You send a postcard to every single person?" I'm like, "Yes." And you would be shocked how many people will call me for legal help just because they get that. Or they respond back and they're like, "Thanks for the postcard. Would love to meet you." We meet, and then next thing you know, I'm their family lawyer across the board. And I think that kind of marketing is a little bit more direct for name recognition, but also with the care and whatever your values are. And then that last stream, I think, is just the actual Google ads and Facebook ads that you sort of do out there. I am very big on actually pushing myself on Google Maps, which I think most lawyers don't do. So for example, Facebook, if I post a Facebook photo of myself, that photo is also going on my Google Maps page for my business page. Because Google doesn't care if you get a good or negative review. They just care that you're using it to push relevant businesses. And then I'll take a step further and take my headshot or photos or anything we post. And instead of saving it as like, I don't know, image 3241, which is what's on my iPhone, I do keywords like SEO keywords such as, real estate lawyer or estate lawyer. And then when you put that on Google into a photo, it's reading those SEO words with every image that you post up.
That's amazing. The way that you have already kind of a structure, how it all functions together, leads to just a marketing machine, which I can really relate to. And Joe, any rebuttal?
No, it's amazing. I mean, I am always intrigued by, it's such a dated industry and there's such a rigid idea of how it should be done. And then when people come along for a number of different reasons, everything that you just said is an exceptional example of this, and say, no, we're going to do it differently. And also you model success that way. I can see the effects. I mean, I'm sure it's very inspirational to some people. And I think it doesn't surprise me as well that you get the emails that you get because you're doing some sort of disruption to the status quo in a way that people, it's jarring to them, right? And I feel like, I mean, if we take this a step further, like let's take AI, for example, like let's take a technology that is now being thrust upon people and further disrupting this industry. Like you seem like someone who would be embracing or at least willing to engage.
I said, we are fully AI in here. 100%. I use ChatGPT. I just talked to an attorney who's covering a trial for me tomorrow, and he was like, have you ever heard of ChatGPT? And I'm like, dude, I didn't say this to him, but I'm like, have I heard of ChatGPT? The last 5 motions I wrote were ChatGPT first, and then I worked on them. But I didn't say that. I was like, no, tell me more. And he's like much older than me. He's like, I'm really good at editing letters, and I asked it to write a letter for me, and it was great. Meanwhile, my staff is using ChatGPT to a degree that I think would make some people blow their brains out. Like I had a consult with somebody earlier. I asked her if I could record the call on my iPhone while she was here. And the trial's tomorrow. She hired me today. So I did like a whole prep with her where I did questions and answers. I recorded the whole thing. And then iPhone now does a transcription if you record. Put that into ChatGPT, and I asked it to write, where's my legal arguments that I did well on? Where in my questions could opposition have asked me questions? Where's my long arguments? How can I improve this? And then I took it a step further and I said, write my paralegal instructions on how to prep my trial binder for tomorrow. What, based on these questions, is important? And now it saved me probably 4 hours of what another attorney can't even take this case on tomorrow. I have the staff to be able to put the trial binder together, and I have the staff to be able to now print documents, but a lot of the think pieces are review rather than coming from scratch. Do I 100% think lawyers are going to become irrelevant. I think that's why my business scheme, or like, I guess my business structure, is one that's horizontally, I vertically integrate with businesses that would work within my law firm. And the reason I do that is because I don't think a high billable for a lawyer is relevant anymore. I think that Joe Schmo could write a demand letter with ChatGPT. You could tell it's ChatGPT, but take somebody who's a little bit at a higher level, intelligence level, who uses, VAs. They could produce something similar to an attorney if they know the resources on how to do it. So the lawyers that are going to survive are the ones who are horizontally, like vertically integrating with businesses, who are growing in different directions, and also realize at a certain level, our jobs are also marketing. Whether or not we like it or not, we're salespeople, just like a realtor is, just like anybody else is. I think when we're done standing, those who are acknowledging AI and realizing we need to do a different type of representation will be able to withstand it.
So you mentioned really having these personal touches, like writing the letters, and having them come to you because they feel like you reached out with care, right? I'm sure when people come to you, they come with a sense of familiarity then. So how do you manage their expectations when you're teaching them what is possible with the law? When they come to you with a problem, how do you really manage those expectations?
I am straight up and honest. And, sometimes it bites me in the butt, and that's very unfortunate, but I am, I think the number one review I've gotten that's good and bad is they say, Diana's your best friend who's also a lawyer. And I try to strive that in the way I do consults, where I'm very realistic with what to expect. And then I'm also very big on what do you want versus what does the law say? And I think some lawyers aren't doing that. I had one particular client, she wanted $40,000 from her ex. There was no case law to back it, none. There was no way I could take this to a judge and, win. And she had agreed with this with her ex-spouse prior. And counsel on the other side was like, there's no way I'm going to tell my client to pay your client $40,000. Like, there's just no way. Nothing backs that information. And I think most lawyers will get stuck on this, like, what does the case law say? Whereas I said, listen, it's very simple. My client is pissed at your client. She wants $40,000. You could give her $40,000 today, or she's going to sit down and we're going to litigate this for 2 years and she's going to make nothing. But your client's going to be stuck in this for 2 years. And then she was like, well, give me case law. I'm like, I'm not going to. Let me know what your client wants to do. This is a negotiation until we're in the court of law. Case law really, like, that's not all that makes or breaks a lawyer. And she couldn't get past, like, where does the law back your argument? And I was like, it's a negotiation. And happy to say, my client got $40,000 2 weeks later, and an attorney who looked at me and said, in those 40 years I've done this business, I've never had somebody like you. And she didn't say it in a positive way.
So how do you get younger lawyers, like when you're looking at the evolution and development of younger lawyers, do you think that they're trained and taught the right way? Like, do you think that there are things that are huge gaps from their education? Are there, maybe another way of asking this is, are there things that you, when you left law school, you're like, okay, that was useful in the sense that now I'm licensed to practice, but
I don't think law school helps you be a lawyer at all. I think it helps you. One of the things that I love about law school is it taught me how to think. And I think that's something that, it teaches you to think different. And I think that's the only positive to law school. I was horrible at property. I, to this day, I'm not sure I could pass a property class. I do real estate law for a living. It's just what's applicable and what you learn are very, very different. Like rules against perpetuities, no idea what it is. I practice real estate law. Like, I'm the best real estate lawyer in the state. Happy to say rule against perpetuities has never been a thing in my life. I reached out to one of my professors. It was the only class I had where she went off script and taught us to do fake intakes, like client intakes, in her class. And she spent 3 weeks teaching us how to be comfortable with saying what our fee structure is. And I think that's probably the most useful thing I got out of law school, was just how to do that. And I reached out to her after I was in private practice for a while, and I got to tell her, like, I was like, I have to tell you, I don't even remember what that class was about. I just remember that was, I think about you daily, because every single day I have to tell people what my value is, and nobody ever talks about that in law school.
It's powerful. It's one of the biggest parts of law I don't think a lot of people talk about is you're kind of your own entrepreneur. At the same time, you got to state your rates, you got to state what you're worth, and be comfortable with that. And that's a big thing.
I think a lot of people are scared to make mistakes too. Like, there's people who just don't want to litigate because they're just scared to get in there. And meanwhile, I'll just get in there and just be like, judges will find what they want. Like, they're not, they're human too. And as long as you're doing the best you can try it. I think a lot of people avoid litigation for that reason. They're just like, I'm not going to jump into it, especially newer lawyers.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. We were talking about this. I think every single segment of law, I mean, I've primarily for the last few years done criminal defense, and the strongest tool that we have as practitioners is our willingness to actually go into try a case. And it's so much more rare now that actually happens across the board. But the willingness to do so, not just the threat of doing it, because a lot of people are sort of blusterous about that, but the willingness to do it and actually show results, I think, is a critical tool that you have when it comes to actually following through on whatever it is that you're trying to get.
Yep. And you know what, though? And going back to AI and the way it's changing the legal environment, I think one of the other things that we are going to see is we're going to see a heavy uptick in litigation. And right now, I don't know how it is in other states, but in our state, there's, I'd say 70% of lawyers aren't litigating. They're sending demand letters. They're doing negotiations. They're doing alternative dispute resolution. And genuinely, I think when people have availability of AI to help them tone down their emails or figure out what they can and can't do, in a way, our clients are more educated. So we're going to have to step more into litigation because we're going to be picking up that ball closer to litigation than ever before.
It's a great point of view. Yeah. Yeah. It's super interesting. Now, I'm curious, you mentioned in the beginning that when you were managing multiple businesses along with being an attorney, you're doing it all, but you don't know if you're doing it well or you're doing it as best as you can. How would you best explain that? Because I think a lot of people go into it with the mindset of, I need to be the best at everything. And that's just not feasible.
I think it's just leaning into the discomfort of knowing that you're not always going to make everybody happy. I just today, I had a friend that I pretty much did like a pro bono case for them because his wife's an attorney and she not good at litigating. She didn't want to litigate. The case went a little bad. So he's very mad at me. And this morning he emailed me and he's like, can I get your malpractice insurance? And I think most people will get an email like that and they'll just freak out, right? And instead, I picked up the phone and I called him and I said, hey, I'm happy to provide you that information, but I want to talk first. Like, I was just like, I did the best I could with everything I represented you on. Tell me why that email came forth. And I was like, is it something that I represented you that you feel I made an error? Or are you unhappy with my customer service? And I think a lot of people are not getting those comfortable conversations. And the truth is your worst client and your best client are going to tell you truths about your business, and you need to listen to both.
And then, I mean, how do you then take that? Like, what do you do? Like, what's a good example of someone who has actually been really harsh about your business, and you've taken something and it's actually been maybe revolutionary to the way that you've gone about changing things?
So it's always some sort of feedback. So if somebody's telling you, I'm not getting enough, one of the things I started, one of my clients said is, we're not getting enough information. There's you have a lot of cases. I'm worried that, I'm going to fall through the wayside. Well, I started sending out weekly updates to my clients every Friday, and they're AI based. They basically take what we talked about I have every file gets touched in our office every single week, whether or not it's me or it's one of my staff members. It talks about, did an audit on the file. This is where it's in case search. This is where it's, whatever it is that our notes are. So we have a system that we've generated that every Friday our clients are getting updates. And those updates are just, here's what happened to your file that week. And sometimes those updates aren't very accurate because it's AI and AI makes a mistake. So instead of, I tell my clients, I'm not a law firm that will be quiet for you for 3 weeks until you email me and ask me what's going on. And you're going to get an automated email every single Friday. But if something looks wonky about it, you just got to accept the fact that we're human and that just respond back and we'll give you the accurate information because it's AI based. So that, I think with my growth, I had to sort of encompass something that most other law firms don't do. And then also learn to tell clients, this is how I do it. And if you don't like it, you can go back to a traditional firm where you get no updates, or you can deal with, an AI based email that sometimes is going to say that your name is James Smith instead of John Smith. And people prefer the second option.
Okay, I've got question for you. If you had to give, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be ominous advice, but advice. Someone came to you and was like, a solo practitioner or a small firm was like, okay, it's great that you do what you do, but they're hesitant to engage or market themselves the way that you do, or hesitant about AI, or hesitant about the future, and they're sort of pushing back on what you're saying. Is there any sort of harsh truth or harsh wisdom that you would want to provide them or share about the future of the industry for people who are actually not willing to engage with AI?
I think the problem is whether or not you're in real estate, whether or not you're doing law, whether or not you're doing anything else, at the end of the day, if you work for yourself and you're a solo practitioner or working a business, you're working a 9-to-5 job. And if you're not investing in systems or systems of operations that keep up with today's data and information, eventually you're going to retire and you're not going to be able to keep up with those coming up behind you. Whether or not that be that you're leaning into AI to automate things, whether or not, you're integrating with other businesses like I have, or you're investing in something, don't just focus on a career where you're working 9 to 5 and you're not having growth. Because a lot of solo practitioners right now, I think I'm a lawyer and I could handle 20 clients a month and that's what I'm doing. I'm a lawyer. I'm taking 300 clients a month. I have a staff of 25 with the only lawyer here. And we use AI to our benefit and it's working. and I'm charging less rates, and I have a much higher hiring rate for younger clients because I'm changing the topics. Estate planning, trusts, and wills. This was a conversation before 50 you didn't hit. I'm getting 30-year-olds to hire me for, trusts between $5,000 to $10,000 because there's nobody in the space of talking about why it's so important for a 30-year-old.
How have you seen social media kind of change that perception, and how have you used it to your advantage?
So social media is like its own little, I will tell you that wherever I go, people say, I see you everywhere. And I think that has a lot to do with social media, right? Figure out how it works. I sat down with somebody for TV when I was doing commercials, and they were showing me some of the systems that they work with. And I'm not in marketing. I don't know what I'm doing anywhere there. And one of the things I thought was very interesting is they pulled up my street and they could show me, just based on algorithms and searching and Facebook, they could hover over my neighbors' houses and pick a subject, and they picked cars, and they could predict what cars people were shopping for and what likelihood they were going to shop for them in the next 6 to 7 months. I had just bought my car within 2 weeks of that meeting, and it said literally the 4 cars that I was considering for months prior, and I ended up buying the one that I never thought I would get, but it was the number one choice on my algorithm somehow. And when you think about that for a second, right, this is like a TV news station that showed me that, but they were just showing me how it works with social media. And that's when I realized that sometimes oversaturating yourself, as long as it's genuine, is a big portion of it. So if you look at me from 3 years ago, I didn't have a social media profile. Now I have one. We are in your face every single day. And you know what? My kids aren't on there. My husband's not on there. My actual personal life that used to be big on social media, nobody knows who it is. But now I walk down the street and people think they know me. They will walk up to me and start conversations in the middle. I have no idea who you are.
What missteps have you made, Diana, on the social media front or on the tech front, or what? Yeah, I'm curious what lessons you've made from mistakes.
We have a lot of VAs in our firm, and when I have VAs, I've noticed that they use AI to make comments on Facebook, and for a while it was all right, I'm responding to everybody and it's working great. Well, people can tell that stuff, so you have to find your brand and how you speak. And if you are using a system like virtual assistants, or you are using AI or anything to that level, it still has to be natural to who you are. And that took me a little bit of time to figure out.
I love the really digging into the authenticity. You have to be who you are, and that's really what's going to shine bright on social media. And I think that's also why you see a lot of pushback from the older generations when it comes to adopting it, because they were always told you got to be a certain way to achieve a certain object. So this is rapidly changing nowadays.
I did a video a couple of weeks ago. I was hosting a happy hour with a couple of other businesses. We're hosting a happy hour as a snow day. And I did a video that was just not my typical law firm video. I was in pajamas. My hair was up. I was working at home. I turned the camera on and I was just guys, it's day 2 of snow days after 2 weeks of winter break. And I literally said, I want to effing murder my children. I was I have locked myself in my house. Somebody effing save me. And then at the end, I just sort of said, I can't do this anymore. I'm grabbing a drink tomorrow. I cannot wait. I'll see you guys there. And that video got so much more ratings and spikes than any of my educational content, anything like that. And people came up to me and were like, I just felt that deep in my soul. And that happy hour had a big turnout. And did that get me business? Absolutely. Because people came to it, they remembered that video, and then the next time they need a lawyer, you're just top of mind. It's not necessarily you're the best. It's not necessarily that you argue the best, that your stats are best on how much stuff you're litigating. You're just top of mind. And then staying top of mind, plus having a good response rate and having this open door policy that most law firms don't, it's a success rate.
I could totally see that. I mean, it's so non-traditional. So you get the positive feedback, and we talked about this earlier, though, where you had a specific interaction with another lawyer that was on the negative side. Do you get negative feedback from that too?
I get both. I have lawyers who very clearly have opinions about me, who they don't bring up my marketing, but sometimes, I had an attorney the other day, he was like, you're that investor lawyer, huh? And I'm like, yeah. investors tag me on Facebook a lot. I guess that then he's like, well, they don't like to pay. And he just like left it there, like just sat in silence on the phone. And I was like, yeah, you're getting paid on this phone call and so am I. So, and then, I have some lawyer, you get it every single day and you get it from people too. I have a commercial that's running right now and there is a sheep that baas at the end of the commercial. Don't ask me why. It just became a thing. And it's probably like 40% of the commercials that run on TV have a baa at the end, and the other 60 do not. So I got a call from somebody on Thanksgiving, like a client, or not a client, I guess somebody who saw it on TV, and they were like, I think that commercial's bullshit. Like, I would never use you. You're so unprofessional. Just went off for a while and then said, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. So what I did is I took that voicemail and I made a happy Thanksgiving video with an overlay of all of my reviews and all of my achievements. And I just played it. And then at the end, where she says happy Thanksgiving, I just made a joke of it. And I basically said, we're thankful for the good and bad reviews. Hope you guys have a great day. And then when I did that, because it was a negative turned into a positive, the next week I had two of my clients send me a giant sized sheep that was like, it's here. Like they were just making fun of it. And now that sheep goes to happy hours with us and it's got a hat with my law firm logo. We've named her Justice. It's just lean into it.
I love how you're really digging into that. Even the negativity can be a positive. It's just about how you frame it, and it can always come back in the best way possible.
If they're talking about you, you're winning. Doesn't matter which way.
Something's working. Now, I want to touch on the real estate law and realty. I'm sure it's a very complex, industry, and the rules have changed recently. So how do you think that's impacted customers coming to your business or what their expectations are?
So, I was a real estate broker first and then a real estate agent. And then I did the title company. And it was actually really funny because I slowly became the best real estate lawyer in the state that was free because I would just answer questions for realtors. And then eventually I pivoted to be a law firm that represented realtors. And now it's sort of becoming a one-stop shop, right? You have to be very careful with how your referrals come in, but realtors use me for their clients. I have amazing marketing. So now what I've done is I've pivoted to being a branding company for realtors where I offer them branding material with my law firm and their stuff on the same contact. And then, so they refer me a bunch of business. And then, of course, it's kind of a self cycle. So now people look up real estate lawyers or real estate brokerages, and I'm number one to come up across all fields. So if they don't come from a realtor, they're looking for, I want to buy a house, I want to sell a house, I want to do a quick claim deed, I want to, do X, I want to do Y. And next thing you know, I'm helping them buy a house, sell a house, do a will, do a trust. And then when they get divorced, I'm doing that. So I end up being a lawyer across the board on some of the biggest purchases and equity ownership that they have in their life. And it just sort of spiraled into this big cascade of business.
I didn't want to take this thing where one mistaken serve leads into another leads into another.
It was always a game plan, but it was going to be much smaller. It was going to be just, I'm going to have 20 clients and I'm just going to stick with them. I think what I did different is I leaned into AI and leaned into marketing and started going, instead of going, let's just think small, I just think very big. And now I've started to speak nationwide. I've started to, the firms are much bigger. I hired my first employee at my law firm about 3 years ago, which relatively is not that long ago. And I'm at 29 employees now. So we just went into, we upgraded from a 2,000 square foot space office. We're now in a 6,000 square foot office. I've got a marketing department. I've got 11 people just in a marketing department. I was never picturing that it would get this big, but it did in 3 years. So we'll see where it goes.
Now, when it comes to social media and advertising, it sounds like you're not afraid to put yourself out there and be, the face. Does that come with naturally to you? Do you feel like that comes naturally to you to be confident on camera and just be your authentic self, or did it take some adjusting to?
It took some adjusting to because I'm plus size. That's one of the things. And I used to wear you'll see I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt right now. I used to just be very self-conscious. So the first time we did any sort of TV. I told myself I would get uncomfortable and lean into it. First time I was on TV, I'm sending photos of like what I'm going to wear to my staff. And they're like, why are you wearing sweaters? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to hide. This is a huge thing. And then after like one or two things of just being uncomfortable, I realized that if somebody's watching me on TV and they're looking at my arms, I'm still a motherfucking TV. They're at home. So I think that really helped. I think sort of figuring out nobody knows what they're doing and that everybody's just kind of doing it. You realize that you're actually empowering others by just sort of leaning into it. And it just takes a couple of times to realize that your discomfort is very much in your head.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think when you do your public speaking sort of around the country, are you like, what is it that you're talking about? One, and then two, what is it that you actually want to be talking about? Is there something that you would love to be able to lecture about nationwide?
So yeah, that's my struggle right now, is trying to figure out kind of what I want to do. Because realistically speaking, if I speak on how to do generational wealth, then I can do, trusts and bring that income in on a nationwide level. So that was my original goal, but then I'm missing the authenticity piece. So I started, I spoke with Martha Stewart. I'm actually speaking with Oprah next week. And that's more about kind of this stuff, how to be your authentic self, how to realize that anything I do is not going to work for Joe if Joe doesn't like any of the stuff, right? Like, it's not about there's a success plan for everybody. There's just a plan that you have to be uncomfortable within the limits of where you can thrive and how to get there and how to achieve that.
Looking back on where you first began, would you imagine you would be speaking with Oprah and Martha Stewart?
I couldn't imagine that a year ago. No, absolutely not. I think I adapted two things in the last 3 years that have gotten me so far that it's so simple, it's insane. The first one is stop looking at budgets. And, I used to be like, I'm not going to hire an employee because I can't afford $50,000 a year. That's a lot of money, right? I have 3 young kids, 50,000. I only made 100 and something last year. Like, that is a huge thing. So when I hired my first employee, I looked at how much is it going to cost me for 30 days. I said, I'm going to fire her in 30 days. Let me see where I am. I literally hired her and I was like, I'm going to fire you in 30 days. I just need a little bit of assistance because I'm struggling. And by 60 days, I had hired 3 more because I realized that just offsetting or being able to budget that 30 days allowed me to think how to make 3 times more income. And I adapted this 90-day model because really, if you're going to the gym for 60 days straight, you're going to lose some weight or, you're going to figure out that your workout routine is not working. So now I do that with my business. We're going to commit to anything. We're going to, instead of saying, no, like, we're not going to do it, I'm just going to say, why not? Let's do it for 90 days, 30 days, full commitment. By day 60, evaluate. If it's not working, get rid of it. And that's really opened up quite a lot of doors.
That's so great.
So then how do you, you're a lawyer, right? Like, you have to be in court. You're the only lawyer in your firm, correct? So, okay, a huge part of running any operation that's 29 people, and even one that would be smaller, requires a tremendous amount of just administrative work and like logistical management and just making sure that everything is running smoothly. That everything you've just described, plus then having to step into court and be a lawyer, that just seems like a tremendous amount. I mean, am I wrong about this? Or have you just figured out the ways to really, really, really like optimize the running of your office? Or, how do you make all of these things work?
You want to hear the God's honest truth? I stopped hiring anybody with legal experience to work in my law firm. You hire a paralegal. I've tried it. I hire a paralegal, 15 years experience. They want to file a motion. They want to be done with the day. I hire 20, 21-year-olds and I'm like, hey, listen, I've got this whole department. This is what it needs to look like. This is what I need help with. This is how I need to structure it. And guess what? Like, my entire firm, 25% of my profits go to the staff that are running my firm. Do you have any idea a 24-year-old that goes from $19 an hour to $80,000 a year, what kind of ideas they will come up with to do traditional lawyering in a different way? I mean, the things that I am the oldest person in my staff, and people find that to be so weird. But I've got a 24-year-old employee right now, and I told her I will fully pay for law school if you can do X, Y, and Z. And she's tripled my profits in 6 months. So with that being said, while I'm in court, I don't have a requirement for my staff to be in the office any day of the week. I don't have a working in the office requirement. If you look outside my door right now, because I'm at the office, every single one of my staff members is here. Every single one of them is here. and they want to be here and they want to get creative. And, people don't realize that, but I had a really interesting consult with a client. I've talked about it a few that I'm going to trial tomorrow. I picked up the case last minute, and first thing I did is bring 3 of my staff members inside the console with me. And it was something that I know those 3 staff members would be very passionate to help that person about. I'm doing a podcast right now. I can see them. They're printing the caseload and they're literally doing investigation. Have I taught them how to do that? Yes. Do I work overtime to teach people who have very little experience on that? Yes. But with the power of AI, with our virtual assistants, with that, you can get a lot done. You can get a lot more done than you would imagine.
That is absolutely incredible. And it shows that you're really optimizing technology, your own skills, your own knowledge to just make the best workflow possible for your law firm to run pretty lean. It sounds like you're keeping profits in mind, but also scaling effectively.
I think you have to realize that if the statistics say 80% of cases are not litigated, lawyers aren't spending that much time in court.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, it's one of the things that I've always found interesting on the criminal side is we talk a lot about emphasizing trial skills practice, which is important, right? I mean, the ability to litigate matters and the ability to do it well matters sort of even more. But it's on such a small fraction of cases, whereas 100% of cases, requires some level of negotiation. So why are we not prioritizing that? And I think there's probably some like conflation between those skills being softer skills or weaker, or maybe not as glamorized because they're not traditional in court, like beating your hand across your chest trying to impress a jury. So yeah, maybe it is. It's just a matter of refocusing on the skills that are actually more pertinent.
Well, you know what? In 100% of our cases have deadlines and have motions and paperwork and complaints and pleadings, all things which now can get done quicker with AI. And a 21-year-old could take the legal arguments you take from Lexis AI with the cases being spit out and get a formulated document where instead of taking 10 hours to write a complaint, my 24-year-old assistant can come up with a complaint with me if I know the facts well, and I could edit it out, and it's cut down in like quarter of the time.
Now, Diana, we always ask everyone at the end of our podcast, what is your hottest take on the industry right now?
So outside of the AI and, I think I am a hot take. I think lawyers are going to watch this and be like, this entire thing, I just need to take notes. She's insane. But outside of that, being in the real estate industry, the National Association of Realtors, as you guys know, has currently set out that now the sellers are not technically required, not that they were ever, but it's become more of a red tape for the buyer's agents to get paid from sellers. So now buyer's agents or people representing buyers have to negotiate their fee structure directly with buyers to be paid from the buyer directly. Well, with that being said, at least in Maryland, some states are attorney states, but in Maryland, you always had realtors doing real estate transactions and attorneys were nowhere near that field. But if you're paying me 3% of a purchase price for a realtor who took a 30-hour course, now all of a sudden the buyer's going to think twice. So my hot take, I guess, would be for those states that aren't attorney states is that the legal field right now, there's an open, ripe taking for the real estate industry because I think realtors are going to struggle. I think that not that they, I was a realtor first. I think it's a lot of hard work, but at the same time, getting, a $600,000 home sold at 3% commission, you're going to think twice about that if you're paying that for the agent, if you're paying that as a buyer. And all of a sudden, you're going to realize as the buyer, my realtor is writing the contracts, my realtor is telling me what these documents mean. And on the top of these documents in very big writing, it says, please consult with a lawyer. So I think they're going to come to law firms. I think that, having this build out that I've got and I'm growing is what's going to be very successful, whether or not it's lawyers doing it or the brokerages figure out how to do it.
Phenomenal hot take. I think just the way you laid it out, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm very curious to see what ends up developing in these states where attorneys are basically the ones you were going to want to consult with at the end of the day anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We really appreciate it. This conversation was fantastic. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one. See you soon.
See you later.
Up next on Between the Briefs.
I didn't expect to like the hot take question as much as I do. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know that we would have such a wide array of sort of subject matter experts. We've just had people talking about, everything from alcohol regulation to different innovative ways starting your law firm to building construction projects around the world.
People harp on facts and then lose sight of any type of train of thought you're trying to take them on.
But he's also living and breathing that revised sort of structure, the way that he even goes about his practice on a day-to-day basis.
When you can't even buy alcohol, you can't vote, and you can be incarcerated. It was an interesting take.
He's just one of the earliest people who has his toe in the water of something that is only going to be scrutinized more and more and more in the coming years.
Stay tuned for the full interview coming to you soon. Between the Briefs is brought to you by Steno. To find out more about Steno and how we combine exceptional court reporting and litigation support services to deliver a superior litigation experience, visit steno.com. That's STENO.com. And then make sure to search for Between the Briefs in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Steno, thanks for listening.